Welcome to Pub in the Desert, where we bring you honest, curious conversations about faith and the human experience. I'm Matthias Miller, here with my co host, Kevin David Gridner. Before we dive in, I want to recap our three guiding principles yet again. Number one, you don't need to be fixed, you need to be known. And we believe that love is knowing and being known. Second, we approach difficult topics with genuine curiosity. We aren't here to win arguments, we're here to understand. And third, we don't come with preset agendas. We let conversations unfold naturally and we follow where authenticity leads us. So go ahead, pull up a chair, grab a drink, and let's explore what union looks like with God, with others, and with ourselves. So, Kevin, I want to open up this conversation. This is kind of inspired by literally a conversation I had with my friend less than an hour ago, and we were catching up, and
Which
along the
is just
way,
proof that we go off the cuff.
off the cuff, like literally, like yes, exactly. Like at least you guys know you get fresh content. Um, and we were just talking about catching up on he was catching up on his life, I was catching up on my life, and I made some kind of comment about not being sure how to think or feel about things that are happening in my life, and he's like he just raised the question. He's like, what is normal, and does it even do any good? Like, and it's when I mentioned that to you, it was a conversation you wanted to engage with, and I do as well, and so I think one of the questions I would like to start with is when you think about the word normal, Kevin, what comes to your mind with that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is a question. Like, what is normal? Like, that's the first thing that pops into mind. And I laugh when I hear people say normal. And it's probably a function of the work I've done my whole life is, whether it's students in a classroom or it's clients in, a spiritual direction setting, like 30 years of doing that will tell you there is no such thing as normal.
Yeah.
Now, everybody has a context for what is normal. And that's what's fascinating to me is what's your context for normal? It's like you think about this. Like, I don't you're not very musical, are you?
I've taken drum lessons and guitar lessons, but I wouldn't consider myself really musical. It's just been
Yeah,
curious
same
exploration.
thing. Yeah, same thing. Like could never do it, have no talent for it or whatever, but love music, all that kind of stuff. A client asked me a question earlier this week. They're very musical, and they said, "Do you think there's such a thing as a bad note?" And I go, like, as far as musical notes go, and said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm not an expert, but it would probably depend on context, because any note by itself is not a bad note. Now, in the context of whatever song you're playing, certainly there could be less harmonic, less melodic notes." And I wonder if we look at our lives as songs, like that becomes the normal rhythm of our lives. That becomes the harmony or the melody of our lives. And in that sense, that becomes normal to us. But what if you have somebody else who has vastly different experiences in their life and their harmonic, song they're playing is vastly different than yours. So their normal and your normal is vastly different.
So let me riff on that a little bit because to go ahead and continue the analogy.
Let's just beat a dead horse.
I mean, like a lot of what you do as a kid, what you do in teaching kids is teaching them how to engage with different contexts.
Right.
Like loud sarcastic humor isn't really appropriate at most funerals, and it maybe in some situations it is. It's contextualized. Um,
Yeah.
and in the same way, if you think of if you shift the frame from from normalcy to attunement, then I can have my life and I can be attuned to my life. Like there's and and attuned to my experiences. But when I interact with somebody who has had vastly different experiences, suddenly it's like there's these worlds collide. Um,
Yeah.
a year or two ago, I can't remember exactly when it was. I got to hear Wes Stauffer share about his upbringing in his childhood, and he was raised in Africa, the son of missionary parents. And one of the things that was very normal for them was you're in Africa and you look out for each other. And I
Yep.
mean, you do that so you don't die, literally. And
Hmm.
so these Western teachers would come and they'd teach and and they would help each other on their tests because that's just what you do. Like you look out for each other.
Right.
And stark contrast with these teachers, it's like, no, you're on your own. Like you can't cheat. Like that's cheating. That's wrong. And so coming from a Western culture where attuning to your environment for whatever reason, this is a deeper question that could be an interesting conversation, which is why is that so important in the Western culture to
Mm.
your own worth and merit and intelligence and have that measured individually in the education system? But that was an example of this clash of worlds. They were attuned to their environment experience. Each party was attuned to their environment and experience. When they interacted, then there was this clash. Just as an example, imagine if you take like some yeah, upbeat pop and like sad blues, and you mingle them, or one person's celebrating at the top of their lungs, and the other person is weeping buckets of tears. Like
Yeah.
merging those two experiences creates dissonance that needs to be.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's fascinating you tell that story because stepping into the classroom after being gone for almost 20 years, my going through the context of working with people in pretty dark situations, that kind of thing. Um, it always became like my mindset became very collaborative. So stepping into the classroom after a 20-year break, my mindset is collaboration. We help each other out. There's no shame in not getting a math problem right. It's like, no, we assess it, we look at it, we understand it, we correct together. And these kids were so thrown off by that. Well, that's cheating. No, no, no. It's collaboration. We're collaborating together. Together, we're better. Something that you don't understand, the person next to you may, and they can help you talk it through it. And if they can't, then maybe I can, or somebody else within the classroom can. Like it's a very union type of mindset. But you bring up a fascinating question, like how did that mindset get implanted in not only our educational system but our Western culture? Maybe it has something to do with competition.
So I mean, it's worth taking a look at. Okay, so the from a position of power, that's an incredibly useful mindset to let other people have, because the more that you can pit people against each other, the more that you can control them,
Right.
and the more that you isolate them, the more you can control them. So there's benefit on that side. Also, if you start, and maybe some of this comes is a bit inherent in the um, I mean, this could easily become a touchy subject because so much of my life comes down to measuring performances of things and people and all of those types of things. And then it can very
Right.
easily turn into how do I prove
Hmm.
performance? And so I
Right.
have to. I came across this video where somebody toured a wow. They toured. I can't remember the all the names, so I apologize. But they were touring the, they spent a day with a billionaire, and he was showing their business and all of that. One of the things he talked about was their monthly awards that they give out, and he said they've never once given out a sales award. It's always been a core value award because that's what
Mm.
they wanted to highlight. And when you're measured, when you're uncertain of your worth, it's very easy to turn to the individualized, like cheating is okay. I mean, this is where people justify it. Cheating is okay if I do it, but it's not okay if you do
Yeah.
it because you're going to encroach on my, like, you're taking away credit that I have rightfully earned. But if I do it, I'm getting
Right.
ahead.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's this, my brother says this all the time. He heard this like maybe on a podcast or a show. It was a sports podcast or show. The host would always say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And it's like that's the mindset, right? If this
Right.
is competition, if this is do or die, if this is survival, if this is very Darwinian, then if you're not cheating, you're not trying. You have to get the advantage somehow. I even think of like certain runners that, I've read their books, listened to podcasts or that kind of stuff, will do everything they can to shave off even the littlest time. Like taking razor blades to their shoes and carving them and testing fabrics for how quickly it wicks water and like all that kind of stuff. And look at the Olympics, like their performance recovery. It's not about getting stronger, but how can I recover faster? How can I be faster? And now, like even recently, I read something that they're having a games where it like, called the enhanced games, where you can have all the performance enhancing drugs and you compete. Like as human beings, like we're going to be, I don't think we're designed this way, but I think in this world, like we're going to be competitive. Like who's better than who? Because the
Right.
measuring stick. And so what does normal become in the midst of an environment like that?
Right.
Does normal become do what it takes to win? Do what it takes to be successful. Do what it takes to become the CEO. Do what it takes to become the champion, all that kind of stuff. As we sit here, the US is playing Australia in the World Cup. And this is probably the most massive competition our world sees every 4 years. Teams from all around the world are here competing. And you watch it and you go, you see people, not get kicked but fall down and writhe in pain and like all just to get a little bit of an advantage. And it's like that's just our mindset, and that is normal. That's accepted behavior. Okay. Within our educational system, same thing. Like you are going to be ranked against your classmates.
Right.
I graduated top two in my class, or I graduated, bottom third of my class, or whatever it may be. There's rankings for education.
Is this bad?
Well, if we're gonna go with our ethos that we state at the beginning of every episode, does this bring about knowing and being known? Does this bring about union?
Right.
Like we talked about in the last episode we recorded the Trinity of me, you, and the Trinity. Like, does it bring that perichoresis, that divine or that mutual indwelling? The I think Eldridge calls it the divine romance, the dance of all of us together. Does it bring this about, or does it pit us against each other?
Yeah.
And what's the motivating factor? What's the heart motivation for all of this? Is it safety and security? Is if I'm better than you, I know that the slowest, I don't have to be the fastest antelope. I just can't be the slowest in the
Right.
savannah.
Right.
Does it bring about that kind of mindset?
Right. I think the issue of, I mean, what is normal? I think the only real way you can challenge that fundamentally is spending time with people for whom that isn't normal.
Right. And if you could characterize the type of people that isn't normal for, how would you characterize them?
I mean, they tend to be the um, I would say most of them tend to be like the highly empathic, highly sensitive, highly caring types of individuals. And the outcome then is that if you're not competing in the game, then the scorecard that you're going to get is going to reflect that. And so, not, I think this is more of a, I would say this is more of an outcome based on them choosing not to participate in the game, but they end up being at the lower ends of um, society because they're not playing the game.
Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Who did Jesus hang out with? So maybe that's our answer to your question. Is this wrong? Is this bad?
Like there's times when if I'm honest, it's like I have to ask myself, am I any different from the rich young ruler who's gotten his own little? He needs like an honorary, like he's an honorary member of our podcast, I think.
Right. He comes up quite often. I wish we knew his name.
he's like he's yeah, probably like anyway, probably has beef with the gospel writers for not.
Right.
Um, it's one chance at long term fame by name. But it's like, do I have that? And it's not implicit that just because, and I think this is kind of the question that Christians have wrestled with throughout the years. It's like if I have means, if I have money, does that mean I'm participating in the game? Did I get that because of that? Is it better not to have that? Is it better to take a vow of poverty so that they know that I'm not participating in the game? Can I can I is it possible to benefit from the game without becoming complicit in it in some way? Like these end up being the questions that we try to wrestle with or run from or rationalize.
Well, throughout history, in myth and story and oral tradition, there's always this figure of the benevolent, powerful one, whether it's a benevolent ruler or the benevolent wealthy man or, that kind of thing, who stoops down and helps others. There that ethos is there. It's like we know internally, almost on a cellular level, that this is possible. But then we talked about a few months ago, um, this entering the system and how the
Right.
system corrupts you.
Right.
Because it's like, it was fascinating. I heard this recently. Two things, and then I want your opinion on this. um, I heard this saying, especially around Matthew 6:22, where Jesus says, "Seek me first in my righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." The language used there around righteousness leads us to believe that righteousness is related to remembering who we are. We think it's perfect character, perfect performance, but the implications around that word are actually remembering who you are.
Hmm.
And I think that's fascinating. And then the second thing is going back to the Sermon on the Mount is blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Well, that word translated meek, it's actually closer to a phrase. It means somebody who has a sword and knows how to use it, but chooses to keep it sheathed. It's actually like a war horse metaphor.
Right.
And I think all of these things are tying to what is normal.
So explain to me a little bit more. Okay, so I mean, the whole idea of so it's I don't feel like you've established in my head that the generous, benevolent, you know, I forget what term you used, is um,
Benevolent, powerful one.
benevolent, powerful one. Um, that's more than just a mythological ideal.
Right.
So there's that question. It makes sense to me. The concept of keeping your sword sheathed makes sense. There's the practical pathway by
Yes.
which you have to. I mean, it's like even with that, if I can be honest and not turn this into some weird performant thing, it's really interesting to think back and it's like where have I had opportunity to do good and I have not done it? Like where did I have a chance to reach down and help somebody up? Where do I have that opportunity now? And where have I for whatever reason closed my heart to that? And I mean that's the uncomfortable, terrifying question, really. And,
Right.
and I think one that we need to continue staying face to face with. With regards to your comment about righteousness being about who we are, I mean, it's to that, it sounds interesting. I don't know that I fully enough understand what you're comparing and contrasting to.
Right. Well, we've been talking about normal and within our world, what normal is. And as we look at it, normal in our world is self-sufficiency, is self-promotion, is self-perfection, is those things. That's normal. But we look at the words that Jesus says and the character of who he is, and it seems to be the opposite of normal. And we want this to exist. We know it exists. We've read the stories. We've read the Bible. We know the nature of God. We know who Jesus is. We know it exists, but it's not normal in our world. In fact, this pathway has a tendency to actually get you in a lot of trouble in a worldly sense.
Mhm.
The outcast type of thing.
Right.
And we're trying to toe this line between as followers of Jesus, we're trying to toe this line between worldly affirmation, success, belonging, acceptance, all that kind of stuff, and the call.
Right.
So, what do we do in that place? What do we choose? Do we choose normal for the environment we live in, or do we choose this other way? Narrow path, wide path.
Right. That's fascinating. Relating it to myself because that's the person that I would like to think that I know the best. Um, it, and yet another way of summarizing what I feel like. And I don't pretend to be like this is. Let me say it like this. I think there's a desire for all of us to be in some kind of elitist
category.
Yeah. And so I had to make a decision to leave one form of elitist category so that I could stop posturing and pretending, and which led to kind of a crisis of identity of who am I outside of that, and what parts of that are true and which parts aren't, and yet there's then the invitation again to become some form of elitist. Right. Like within every community, it's very easy to, feels to me like it's a constant battle to actively seek to incorporate people whose perspectives are different than yourself. Right. And right. I think, I mean, if there has to be one battle that we have to fight, if you want to call it a battle, I don't know if that's the right term for it. It's like, it is the battle against being insular. Yeah. And maybe the narrow road is forsaking the path of elitism. And I know this.
And staying present.
And staying present.
That's the fascinating thing, right? Because it's, as in human nature, for all of us, it's all too easy to take one on the chin and then go away and hide. Right. Just isolate.
Right.
And understandably so. That didn't feel good.
Right.
But this person, this archetype, the road that Jesus walked shows us that no, you take the shots and you stay present. And maybe it shows us a dramatic thing about what love means. One of the core parts of love or components of love is love stays around. And that's not normal. Look at our entire culture, cancel culture, and everything that goes on social media, and debates within the church and debates within society. I remember years ago, Rob Bell wrote a book called Love Wins. And to those who were outside looking in, he was denying the existence of hell. When I read it, what I saw was this is a guy who's wrestling with ancient teachings, ancient traditions, and trying to see what the word actually says about the concept of hell. Now, he has his own bias, and he comes to some conclusions, some of which I agree with and some with which I don't. But the most heartbreaking thing to me that happened out of that was days after this book was published, a very famous Christian figure, Reformed Christian figure, wrote a post that all it said was R.I.P. Rob Bell. He said what you're not supposed to say, and now he's dead. He doesn't exist. What? Because he was bringing in curiosity into a conversation. Now he's dead. He's been canceled from Christian culture. Right. Mainline Christian culture. Why?
And like there's so much of a movement towards accountability of church leaders, accountability of government. I mean, as much as that actually can happen. And there's a lot of places in which it's like you have to pick a side, or others will compel you to pick a side of some kind. And if you're not fully supportive of the victim, you therefore must be fully supportive of the perpetrator. and even the labeling of those types of things. And again, it doesn't change the reality that harm is real, harm happens. It's
Yes.
like, but how do you? So here's his thought. As you were talking, this little question popped in my head. But the whole idea, we have this idea. We hear this term, the straight and narrow,
Mm-hmm.
staying on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was doing, admittedly, just a little bit of research
Yes.
here. That's King James terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Straight meaning, surprisingly, narrow. So not a theological statement, but a curious question. What if the straight and narrow is actually just the narrow and narrow? And what if it's actually not straight, as in STRAIGHT, not STRAIT? What if it is
Mm.
actually a winding path? And what if that winding path is the instinct to separate when we're hurt, and
Mm.
the winding path is a path that, or maybe it's us wandering off the path and finding our way back towards the path to stay in, to move closer when we're pushed away, or when we take one on the chin.
All
Um,
right.
what if that winding path takes us towards a group of people so that we can be curious and understand and learn what there is to learn from them? And what if that path takes us towards another group of people that's very different, away from that group, so that we don't become insular with that particular way of looking at the world?
Right. Right. What if that whole straight and narrow thought process completely breaks apart on entry into the worldview of the Bible? Talk to me about the straight and narrow in relation to Abraham, Moses, David, Rahab, Ruth, Peter, Paul. Talk to me about straight and narrow with them. Draw their path on a map. The nation of Israel wandering in the desert for 40 years. Draw me that straight and narrow path. And for that fact, any human being ever, it's a fallacy. It's an utterly demonic fallacy. Be perfect, be on the straight and narrow. That's not how life works.
Find your whatever it is. Find your true north. Find your goal. Find your target. Find your whatever it is, and stick to it. And do not
Yeah.
deviate.
Yeah. When I was in my late teens, I just graduated from high school, going to college, working, all that kind of stuff. Like I had an older guy, not much older. I think he was probably in his mid 20s at the time, um, who I met, and he was super into snowboarding. And I was like, met him at a party. I'm like, oh, I would love to learn how to snowboard. I'd only skied up to that point. I'm like, and he's like, and kindest guy, he's like, come with me sometime. Okay. So we go, and first thing he does is take me to the top of the mountain, the Black Diamond runs. And it's California, so the Black Diamond runs aren't that intense, but there's still some intense ones. And he goes, now get down. This is my first time on a snowboard. And are you crazy? Don't we like start on the bunny slope or like what? He's like, no, the way you learn is by falling down. And I fell down, cuts and bruises and everything from that day. And I was so sore I couldn't walk for a week. But within a year, I had a sponsorship as a snowboarder because of what he taught me. And I'm 18, 19 years old, 17, however old I was. I was late teens. And I didn't understand the beauty of what he was teaching me at that moment.
Mhm.
I couldn't. And it didn't strike me until years later, probably in my late 30s, early 40s, where I heard this quote from Carl Jung, where he said, "Where you stumble and fall, you will find pure gold."
Wow.
And it hit me. I was on a run. This is when it hit me. It's fascinating. You're gonna love this story. I'm on a run. I have my headphones in, and it's old school, so I have like the iPod in my pocket, and it's corded, and all that kind of stuff. Sunglasses, hat, everything. And I catch a toe on some uneven pavement, and I just yard sail. Like everything. iPod, headphones, glasses, hat, da da da. And it's like the middle of the day. So there's traffic, there's people walking by, and these people walk by like, "Are you okay?" And I'm just dying laughing because in that moment, I understood what he was saying. I almost needed the physical experience of the yard sale and falling down in order to understand what he was talking about. Now, in that moment, the lesson I learned is when I get tired, my feet get lazy and I don't lift them up like I would. And when I do that, I'm going to catch a toe on something and I'm going to, okay. So I was like, oh, it makes sense to me. But I think that's the fallacy of the straight and narrow is that you are so perfect that even, and you're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. Even when you make mistakes, you cover them up and you massage them and you make them look good. You can't actually get the pure gold from when you fell down. And I know this till years later, like what Carl Jung was talking about there was shadow work, was you need to understand the darkness inside you. That I do have the proclivity for great good and great evil. And I need to understand my capacity for it. Because as long if you don't understand your capacity for it, then that beast is going to rear its ugly head at the most inappropriate time.
Right.
You're stressed, you're worked, you're tired, you're hungry, you're alone, you're whatever. But if you deal with the shadow and you bring that under your control, your acknowledgement, then that's not going to happen. And I wonder how that ties to the normalcy of the the church and church leadership and pastors falling and that kind of stuff. Have they believed for way too long that they had to be the straight and they had to be perfect, and eventually the darkness just jumped out?
I mean, kind of what I hear you saying is okay, so like immediately I hear the voices arguing. It's like you lead by example. How's that for a great little cliche? Which
Yeah,
there's an element of truth. I mean, there actually is truth to that. The question
right.
is how. But
And
then,
I'm going to keep myself from cussing at this point because I'm so frustrated by this. And we don't want to get marked as explicit. But how you lead by example is when you stumble and fall, you take accountability for it, you learn from it, you grow, you become stronger within community. That's the example we need, not perfection, because perfection is an illusion.
but then all the naysayers are pointing to the people who they. I mean, this is they're cussing in their sermons because that makes them relatable, and they talk about their lifestyle, whatever. And it's like then you have people on that side, and they're saying, "Well, this is authenticity, so it makes me relatable, and people want to follow me." And then you have this age-old argument, which is like, okay, like if this is what authenticity is, we don't want any of it because it's just unrighteousness. Like this,
Right.
these distortions persist. And
Yeah.
so the question then becomes, how do we have, I mean, this really is quite embarrassing how often all of our conversations come back to really the same topic, which we circle constantly because I don't know about you, I'm old, I'm forgetful, and like it's like it comes back to pursuing Christ and union in humility and pursuing love in humility.
And
Like,
I think we're in great company.
yeah,
One of my favorite writers of all time, Brendan Manning, he has, I don't know how many ever books, 20 some, whatever, and sermons, podcasts, that kind of stuff. And he talks about one thing and one thing only. Everything else is a stream of that. You are loved as you are here today by God, not as you believe you should be. That's his message. For 40 years, that was his message. I think we're in good company. But and the thing that frustrates me about that example you gave is, did any one of those people who have an issue with that guy actually sit down and get to know him? No, I guarantee you they didn't. Because if you sit face to face with somebody and you don't have an agenda, you actually genuinely want to know the person across from you, I don't think there's any way, if both people are there honestly, to know and be known, that we walk away disconnected.
right.
There's no way. There's no way.
I mean, most fundamentally, like this is how you gain perspective. We went, our family went on a little road trip a couple weeks ago, and I was looking for audiobooks. I was chatting with Claude for some good recommendations, and it's like I want this but not that, and it surfaced this book called, which I'm only part of the way through, and I told you you're not allowed to read it until I finish it, and so
Right.
I will.
And I haven't. And I haven't.
Yeah, um, a true friend. Um, but it's called the Scout Mindset, and the basic premise is this: it's like you don't actually, these are labels for ways of thinking. The one way is the Scout Mindset, which is basically like we're exploring, and the other one is the Soldier Mindset, which is we're here to win. Um, and and one of there's a few interesting observations. One of them being that you don't have to, that the question is not actually debate or no debate. The question is it debate with the intention to essentially, with the ascension, essentially to know, be known, to sharpen your thinking, to pursue the truth in a more deeper fashion, or
Mhm.
is it debate to overpower somebody else,
To win.
to win? And also, if you want another little fun little tangent, talk about normal. Um, you don't actually need to lie about the truth for motivation. There's all kinds of fun sayings about if you believe it, like whether you believe you can or you can't. It's true. No, it's
Hmm.
actually not.
Hmm.
Um, and she cited the author cited the examples of Bezos when he was fundraising for Amazon, and he told the investors like, "There's a 70% chance you're going to lose all your money." And
Hmm.
he had unbounding enthusiasm, but was bold faced with it was completely bold faced with the reality of it. Like,
Right.
Elon Musk allegedly, or she reports that he gave a 10% success to the companies that he founded. Um, and to most people, this was absolutely ridiculous that he would spend his PayPal payout to go invest into companies with a 10%. Like mathematically, how does that even make sense? And to him, it was, and her point was that there are things that are completely likely to fail and are still worth doing anyway. But
Yeah.
the question is that Scout mindset. So to your point, it's like, can we sit down, have a conversation, and explore and follow in pursuit of truth to further unpack reality as it is, not as we want to distort it to be.
Right. Right. And like talk about the primary example of a scout mindset. Jesus is the primary example. Like he knew in coming that there was going to be severe resistance,
Right.
that he was not going to be able to convince everybody that this was the way. And he came anyways. It was for those, it was for the not normal who had been trod under by the boot of the normal to say, no, this is not the way life works. I get that everything around you says that. But in his first public address, he gives the Beatitudes and he gives a list of saying these are people who live in the kingdom.
Right.
That's a powerful thing. And can we show up? There's so much language in self-help and that kind of stuff. And, you see it everywhere. It's like, show up, show up, show up. Okay. No, it's not enough to just show up. How do you show up? If you
Right.
show up to a conversation truly wanting to know the other person, to love them, to understand them, that does not mean agree. That does not mean endorse. It doesn't mean any of that. It means to know them. Then you can't walk away with that. You can't walk away disconnected
Right.
because that's not how the kingdom works. No, the normal thing is if I show up to know and be known, and you show up with a dominance mindset, you're gonna win because I'm not fighting. I'm here for a very different purpose.
Well, or which is also maybe more common, is that when if you show up that way and I show up this way, that or vice versa, that yeah, I will if I'm here to win and you show up in that way, then at the point that I recognize that you're not engaging in the game, there is no winning anymore. Like there is
Nope,
no
nobody wins.
nobody wins, and it resorts to I think fundamentally, if you want to like it resorts to escalation of violence. Like isn't that fundamentally what it is? Like Jesus
Yep.
Jesus keeps bringing questions back, like, have you thought about this? Have you considered this? And there was no, it's like nailing jello to the wall. And it's like, finally, at the
Yeah.
point of like, we have to win. And he's like, I'm not playing this game. And yes, we have to. And we'll kill you so that we can win.
Yeah. Well, Nicodemus tries to tell him that, right? He's like, we've seen what you do. We know you're from God. Could you just cool it with the rhetoric?
Right.
That's essentially what Nicodemus is saying to him. And Jesus is like, I can't. I can't. And so it's going to escalate to violence. Yes, either psychological, emotional, spiritual, or physical.
Sure.
There will be blood one way or another. Now, here's the fascinating thing. When it escalates to that, what do you do? If you're walking that narrow path,
There's really nothing like, if you're walking that path, there's little else to do besides sidle up to Jesus and walk that journey. Like, the, what else is there?
you don't defend yourself, you don't attack, you don't gossip, you don't do any of that. You don't.
Right.
I had a situation a number of years ago, very precarious situation, and there was emails going back and forth. And I went to one of my mentors. I had proposed a response to the email. I went to one of my mentors. I go, "What do you think about this?" And she goes, "What's your goal?" And I said, "If I'm being brutally honest right now, it's domination because I'm right." And she goes, "Is that what you want?" No. It's like kids answer when you ask them a question. You're like, no. So I had to bite my tongue, and I responded differently. And the response was an offer to engage. And what I got a response was domination language, violence.
Right. So it feels like so many of our conversations is me bringing deeper context to my own experiences. But I've, I've had my own version of that story, and now looking back, um, um, I've always assumed that most of that violence was a result of my own stubbornness, and there's a sense in which it was maybe. I mean, there's undoubtedly my own contribution to the problem. Like that, how little or how much of it I recognize. But maybe the issue is not the stubbornness on whether to cave, but or like the stubbornness not to participate in the domination of power, to
Yeah.
step away and say, I mean, it's like it really is in a lot of cases. There's this chant to fight so that we can see who's right, who's wrong, and it's
Yeah. Because there is that, we've talked about this repeatedly, but there's a moment where I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm whatever, and there's this thing in front of me, and I want to either run away from it or I want to attack it. And
right.
the middle path, the one that I believe Jesus leads us to, is to stand at that line and be present.
Right.
I'm not moving forward, I'm not moving away. I'm standing at the middle line, I'm present to it. And that is ridiculously painful. That is not normal.
Uh, I was talking to a business friend of mine who has done quite well in life and had this business that was going well, but he just hated it. He didn't. It was a drain, and he had considered selling it um, and resisted. Somebody asked him. He's like, "So why aren't you? Like, what's the one thing that's why would you keep it?" And he finally, I mean, he admitted out loud. He's like, "Well, the reason I'm keeping it is because I'm scared of what people will think of me when I sell it." And he realized that, and he's he has a gift of honesty. He said the moment I said that, when I said it out loud, I recognized what it was, and he sold his business and decided to work solo because he just liked that so much better, to go lean and not have a lot of people depend on him. And he shared about the fear that he's had about other people passing him, his peers. And because of his decisions, he's done really well in life. He's ahead of most of his peers in life. And there's this little like gnawing thing that he has to stay present with of, what if I make this decision and everybody passes me, all my peers pass me? And he recognized, and I can feel that. I've had that thought, and like that thought has been drifting around in the back of my mind over the last several weeks. So it's, or months, maybe the last 6 weeks. So it's uncanny to hear somebody talking about that. But it's like it's can we be to your point, this is just me kind of like verbal vomiting my own experiences with what you're saying. It's like, can we be present with these types of fears?
There was a moment that I think I went from a good teacher to a better teacher. And I think that moment was when it was made very clear to me that my job was for them to surpass me. I want to teach them everything I know, and then they can do with it what what God leads them to do or what they want to do. And and it as I sit here now, it becomes one of my joys to see former students do so well, way beyond me. That's a joy, but it wasn't always that way. And it was very subconscious. It was like, no, I'm the authority. I'm right. I'm da da da, all that kind of stuff. And it just didn't work. That was the normal. And it created this contentious competition. And they're children. So obviously they're going to be subservient just because there's a power dynamic. And that's not fair to them. And I just saw it and I was like, no, this isn't the way. This is horrible.
So what? So what did that? Obviously, Kevin, you had this splash of inspiration in a moment, and then instantly everything changed, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. It was just like the wink of an eye.
and guys, if you want to learn how you can have this moment of instant transformation,
Yes, we have a program. It's 90 days. It'll cost you 5 grand and,
yeah.
sign up here at the website.
If you don't get the results, it's your problem, not ours.
Right.
Um, but what was that? What was that
I'm gonna
process
hit
like?
pause while I vomit. So
Right. But what was that process like? Like, what were the perspectives that you started, like, what were the cracks in the window of reality that started to break, first of all? And then second of all, how did you start reorienting your way of thinking around that?
this was years ago. So as I remember it, it was heavily relational. I saw these kids who were who were just having a really rough time. And they were rebelling in the way that they could within that environment. And there was chaos within the room. And I'm like, what is the source of, like, where is this chaos coming from? Am I not in control enough? And and I talked to one of my older mentors, and I was explaining the problem to him, and he said, maybe the control is the problem. And that set me down this path and a hugely formational thing of how I think now as far as union and knowing being known and all that, everything that goes along with that is these kids just want to be known. And when you start to know them, you see the gifts and talents that they have.
Okay.
And either I see that gift or that talent as a threat, or I see it as something beautiful to be fostered and grown and help how I can. And so it was all relational. It's like, I don't want this kind of environment within this room. I don't want this competition. I don't want this if you're not cheating, you're not trying mindset. And so that led me down this path of no, 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 no. This isn't about me because it was about me for the longest time. And that's a horrible place to teach from.
Right.
Look at our universities today, where professors go in there and make it about them. no, this is, and not every professor, obviously. That's a very exclusionist statement. But no, it's about we. So what are we doing together? How are we working? Where are we growing? Where are we learning? Where, what problems are we able to solve, like together? I'm absolutely convinced of that, and you can't convince me otherwise
Right.
because I've seen how it works. But what had to die? My self-importance. And that's a painful thing when your self-importance starts to die. Because that's that moment, at least as I hear it, that you were telling about your friend who what if my peers pass me by? That's the my value, my worthiness, my belonging, my acceptance, my position. If I give that up, what do I have?
Right.
What do I have?
And what he has is the thing that he's always had that's always made him successful at what he does, which is his ability, his practical abilities, as well as his obsessive curiosity around about other people. Like,
A friend sent me this song earlier today. It's by a guy named Jason Upton, and the title of the song is "God Finds Us."
hmm,
And the song is about how I'm chasing after these things and I'm justifying myself and I'm getting acclamation, acclaim and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, it's all nonsense. It's all building the Tower of Babel.
right,
But God finds us in those off the straight and narrow path. When I do this, oftentimes I've heard that God stands on the road and says, "Come back to me." And I just don't agree with that.
hmm,
I think he's there with us.
hmm,
If scripture is to be believed and Jesus is to be believed, which I wholeheartedly do, then God is always everywhere in every one of our situations with us. And I think that's the righteousness is remembering that in everything, every situation, every place we're in, he is with us. And in that moment, he's discipling
right.
and he's encouraging and he's comforting and he's disciplining and he's doing all these things, but he is with us in every last situation. And righteousness is remembering that this is who I am.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not normal.
Hey, you didn't forget my question that I asked. I appreciate that. Um,
Every once in a while, it clicks in with the tangents I'm willing to go on.
takes a minute to get there. No, I mean that makes a lot of sense, and I think there's once again, I'm taking notes because there's uncomfortable reorientation in my life, but like that there's this sense in which what is again what is normal and is it that exactly what you're describing is an awareness that he is with us and that we're not alone, both with him and with the people around us. And so much of the struggling, like just my friend, this is easy to pick on him because he's not here. It's like the
Yeah.
question is, will my friends still be friends if I'm not this kind of person? And and The honest answer is that we don't know.
There's no way we could.
And some very well might not. And I think the painful thing is, but there's beauty in pain in that. The beauty is that you really don't know the depth of friendship that you have until you've had your external identities stripped away and you discover who stays. And you don't know who your friends are who are there just for what they can gain from you, except when all is stripped away and they leave. It's very much Peter and John and Judas kind of moments.
Yep. Right. One of my mentors used to say, there's only one voice I trust when it says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Only one. And she would go on to say, this isn't a shameful thing towards humanity. Because I believe that person who looks you in the eye and says, I will never leave, I will never forsake you, actually means it in that moment. It's just when the wind comes up and the waves rise and the storm really hits, will you still be there? Or will you protect yourself?
Jumping back to the scout mindset, what if wedding vows, marriage vows, would reflect the honesty of this?
Instead of the unrealistic expectation that's given.
I guarantee that you're marrying a very selfish person that is going to disappoint you and hurt you and not always be there for you and run away from you when it shouldn't, and I should stay. And how on
when this person hurts you deeply, because they will, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, and there's all sorts of context around that. What are you going to do then? And there's even a further layer of that. Why do people get in relationships?
Mm-hmm.
That may be a topic for another conversation because I know we're running short on time, but I'll say it here. In all my experience, conversations that I've had, people I've sat with, all that kind of stuff, most often what happens is one person looks at another and says, I like how you make me feel about me.
Mm-hmm.
And once you stop making me feel good about me, it's over.
Right.
So a really interesting question, and I'm not saying I know the answer to, but I think it's a curious question is, scripture tells us what God brings together, let no man tear apart. Are we absolutely sure that God brought this relationship together? Or did we?
And is that a fully binary answer or is it a nuanced answer?
I don't know. I suspect it's heavily nuanced, but
there's also this very curious question, especially when it comes to codependent relationships. And if I get to the point where I stop saying that I am responsible to make you feel this way, and implicitly then in that is that there's an invitation for you to find some of this. I mean, again, there's so much context and nuance, and I won't even pretend to be able to do justice. But broadly speaking, there's an invitation for you to find this in Christ, and deriving that from his experience of his unconditional love. There is also a helplessness in that because there can be this sense of wanting to in any kind of context or relationship, to say the right thing, to smooth it over, to let them feel good and be happy with the outcome in any number of ways. And the reality of it is that anytime that we play God and we step away, we don't know how they'll respond. They may turn to Him for that, or they may not. They may turn elsewhere, and we're not in control of that.
Their prayers may be to the gods in the garden, not God.
Yeah.
But this goes back to what we were talking about the triangle of me, you, and the Trinity. The only way it works is from me to the Trinity to you, and vice versa. If we try and start doing this, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your question is a very interesting question. I know the argument against that so well that I could probably argue it on behalf of people I don't agree with. So that could be a very interesting conversation.
It could be a fascinating conversation. It's very St. Thomas Aquinas of you. He would talk about how in any sort of debate or conversation, that it was absolutely necessary that you fully understood the other person's perspective and be able to argue their perspective before you tore it apart. And he does it time and time again in his writing, where he'll fully lay out their argument better than they do. And then he'll go, "This is the problem I have."
Yeah.
That's a lost art in our world.
I had a client on site this week, and we were chatting somewhere in the middle of the conversation. We are talking about an approach, and I was talking to myself out loud. I was like, and they recounted this back to me, or I wouldn't have remembered it or thought about it, gave much thought. And he's like, "Yeah, you said," he was pacing around, and he said, "Yeah, that's terrible. No, that's awful. Like, no, that's perfect. Like, we should do this." And the articulated arguing in my head, and I feel like. It's anyway. This is the Achilles heel, because when you can argue both sides, you have to. It can leave you in such a wondering wasteland that it can feel very uncertain and shaky at times. But it also forces you to be honest about the limits of your knowledge and understanding, and also about being comfortable in the midst of the tension.
That's the big thing I see in taking that approach, is it absolutely requires humility. Because if you're truly listening to somebody else, they're going to bring up something that you did not consider in a perspective, and you have to be able to actually consider that.
Right.
It requires humility.
Yeah.
Again, not normal.
Not normal. Well, folks, that's a wrap. Not only are Kevin and Matthias not normal by everybody else's standards, they're trying not to be normal, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And they're inviting you not to be normal as well.
Yeah. In fact, I might be so bold as to say the worst thing you can be is normal.
Ooh. I'm going to give you just like 2 minutes to defend yourself there.
Just a context. In this world, with everything we've talked about self-perfectionism and the straight and narrow and the ego and everything that goes into that, if that is normal, then the worst thing you can be is normal, because it's dishonest to yourself and to everybody else.
Yeah.
See, I didn't need 2 minutes. I just need 30 seconds.
Come on, Kevin. Look at that. Yes. Yep. And further back by Jesus' statement that the true way is narrow. The other path is wide. That is, the wide path is the normal path.
Yeah, you want to be first, be last. You want to be the leader, be the servant of all. Like, all of his language is, this is normal for our world. This is not what I've called you to. This is not how the world was designed. This is how it was designed. Meekness, poor in spirit, hunger and thirst for righteousness. These are the primary motivators in his world.
Yeah. All right.
All right, my friend.
Any good? Well,
Yeah,
so
don't be normal.
don't be normal. That's just there you go. Simple. Don't be
If
normal.
you take nothing else from this, don't be normal.
Somebody somewhere is scratching their heads and they're like, I'm at the end of the episode and I still don't have anything. Here it is. 3 words for you. Don't be normal. There you go. That's it. All right. Well,
I have a
Kevin, that
friend.
it's
Sorry,
been a
in the
pleasure.
last story.
Yes, please.
I have a friend when somebody looks and goes, "That's weird. That's odd. That's not normal." Da, da, da." He looks them straight in the eye and it just deadpan goes, "Thank you so much." That's his response to any comment like that.
That's
You're weird.
awesome.
You're odd. You're da, da, da. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. We'll wrap up on that note.
We'll wrap up at that point. Thank you very much. All right. Till next time.
All right, my friend. Okay, till next time.